accreditation surveys. My biggest concern when I read this brief bill, which is my good Senator Bramble's bill, is infection control. And I'm certain that anybody who has an issue with this bill, that's probably number one on the list. How many people are going in one after the other. We have the Department of Health and Human Services regulate issues of health to keep us safe, and that's one of their primary responsibilities, to keep the public safe from illnesses. So I would encourage that that it either be scrapped or amended. We know that these are used by friends and neighbors, and that's fine. But I think if a proprietor is charging for a wellness treatment, then we need to regulate that.
Thank you, and we will take note of your comments. Go ahead.
My name is Benjamin. Is this on?
You push that red button, or push the button on the bottom. It's not a red button. Push it and it'll light up.
There we go. Great. My name is Benjamin Harrison. I represent industry. We're looking at opening one of these studios, cold plunge and sauna. I would just say two things. These specific brand of cold plunges that we are using are used commercially for pay in 45 states. As of today, there has never been a recorded death from cold plunging in the United States. This treatment has been around for over 3,000 years. The chemical that is used, it's not a chemical, is ozone sanitation, which is more effective than chlorine and safer for patrons. It also targets some organisms that chlorine does not target. So in terms of health and safety, these prefab units are incredibly safe and, to my knowledge, have never been cause for a health issue.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody from staff online. Okay, we don't have comment online for that. Sorry. Aren't you glad you got done before that happened? Let's close public comment. Let's bring it back to the committee for further discussion and or action.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Bramble.
I'd move that we pass it out favorably, recognizing that there may be an amendment on the floor. The issue of water quality, as you heard from the industry, these units already have built-in sanitation. That is an issue. The Department of Health, this doesn't fit regulating it like a swimming pool. That's why we're bringing the bill forward. They're not regulated in other states. We don't regulate float spas. And so if appropriate, if we can find consensus, we'll have an amendment on the floor. If not, the bill will run as stands.
Okay, thank you. So the motion before us is to pass favorably from this committee SB 106 first substitute. Discussion to that motion. Seeing none. Any sum?
Waive.
Waive. All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Chair Bramble.
Thank you, Senator Sandel. Next up is Senate Bill 102, Funeral Services Amendments. Senator Plum, welcome. Do you have a sub?
I do.
Would you like us to substitute?
Yes, please. I'd love to speak to the substitute,
Chair will
Mr.
entertain.
Chair.
Senator Bloom, would you like to make that motion? Hit your light there so I know which is your mic. There we go.
I'll motion to adopt the substitute. I don't know, is it first sub?
Yes.
First sub.
Then what we'll do, we'll adopt the substitute, and then you can explain to us what it is you're presenting. The House is different. They explain the substitute, and then they they explain the bill and the substitute. Then after they've done all of that, then they make a motion on whether they're going to substitute. We'd rather have in front of us what we're dealing with.
What we're working on.
Motion is to delete in title and body Senate Bill 102 and replace it with first sub Senate Bill 102. Discussion to that motion. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Senator Plum,
Thank
to
you, Mr.
first substitute Senate Bill 102.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. To members of all of us joining, thank you for being a part of the process, as challenging as it may be. The bill that I want to talk to you about today for this first one is something that came to me actually right after I was elected by a number of members of my constituents of my community. And it has to do with something that's called natural organic reduction. There's a term called terramation for it. There's also one called human composting. And I thought to myself, I just am not sure I want to be the elected person who goes in and that's the first thing that they do, because there is a little bit of a kind of squirmy that comes with that, and kind of unease, right, when we talk about things that are new, and also when we talk about dying and death. And as the year progressed on, more and more people approached me. And the more I heard about this, the more I thought, this is an option that really resonates with a lot of people. And really, for whatever reason, when it comes to what their final rest looks like, feels like what they would like. There are 7 other states that have passed laws that allow natural organic reduction. Arizona is also currently considering a law. And for me, when I put this bill together, it was very important for me to leave it in the realm of the professionals. I wanted to leave it in the realm of the funeral services directors. I didn't want this just to be opened up to anyone could open a shop and start composting, right? And I wanted it also, I wanted to give the credit to the folks who, this is their industry. This is their space. These are the things that they've considered, sometimes for generations of families, and give them as well another opportunity to have some innovation in their businesses. We will eventually have challenges finding space for cemeteries, especially in our cities. We will have reasons perhaps to consider other ways to look at that final disposition for our human bodies. So then I looked forward and I saw, well, in 2019, Senator Vickers passed a law that allowed something called alkaline hydrolysis, another possibility for the ultimate disposition of your human remains. And I thought, that's actually, that sets up a framework for me. What if we followed the same framework as Senator Vickers and said, all right, here's a new and novel and already in existing way, but I want to be very careful with it. I want to make sure we put it with the professionals. I want to make sure it's being handled correctly, and I want to talk this out with all of us. Now, I'm not here to advocate that this is the #1 way to go or the very best way. Some of the folks that really would like it for themselves like that it does use less energy. Some of the folks like that it is a more natural, like before we had all these things, we would just end up in the soil and go back to the earth. The people have different reasons for the reasons they choose the way they want to rest ultimately, right? And for me, that means that's a very personal choice. I would love to be able to give this to the type of folks who want it. And the more and more I hear about it, I got to be honest with you, it starts to speak to me. This concept of being able to go on in the form of the earth that I came from, I'd like to give back to. I understand there will probably be some folks here today from the funeral industry. We've been having some great conversations. The sub that is going today, just for kind of clarification for you, it did change coroner in the reference to that throughout the bill to medical examiner, and that was at the request of our DHHS folks. There's been kind of some title changes there. There was also an addition that we wanted to be clear that the authorized person that remains or a human body could go to, I wanted that to be clear that that was also to a funeral director, much like it is in the traditional burial, cremation, and alkaline hydrolysis spaces. With that, I take any questions or thoughts.
Questions from members of the committee? Senator Kwan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if there are any public health or safety concerns with them.
Yeah, and that is one of the things I think, especially when I've been talking with some of the funeral directors, is like, how do we know? Are we sure? And it's very important to me that that's considered. So there are some carve-outs for when folks cannot use this process. So if you've had a prion disease, something that I know we've talked about, some of us, if you've had tuberculosis, there are reasons that this would not be a process you are eligible for. The process itself does break down all other bacteria and viruses to include COVID-19. There's quite a bit of heat involved, and there's quite a bit of heat over time involved for it. So ultimately, I do feel quite comfortable that the data and the science are there that this does have the public health and safety protections. It's also been fascinating for me as I've gone through this to learn about the other methods of potential disposition at the end of life and understand, for example, I didn't know that in a traditional burial when your bodily fluids and blood come out of you, that's put into the sewer. And then that it goes through our water kind of cleaning process. Again, these things that initially make me go, whew. But I trust our systems that they have tested and that they're certain that what we're doing is okay. And I feel the same way here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? See none. Again, how many in the public would like to speak to this bill? Come on up, sir. Anyone else? This is going to be the final call for members of the audience. Do we have anyone online? Okay, we have one person online and one person here, and then we'll come back to the committee. Go ahead, sir. Yeah, have a seat. Now, there's a sign-in sheet. you can sign it after you're done speaking, because we'll go to the online person. Identify by name, occupation, if you represent a group.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members, for letting me come and address this committee. My name is Tyler Russin. I'm owner and operator of Russin Mortuary and Crematory. We have 3 locations in Davis County. I am also on the board of directors for the Utah Funeral Directors Association, and have been assigned to legislative matters for the funeral industry. I do want to thank Senator Plum for reaching out. She's great, and we've had some positive interactions. I have had this assignment with the...
Sir,
Yes.
I forgot to mention,
I'm sorry.
we are pressed for time. We have a major bill, so you're going to be limited on your comments. So try to keep them. I'm not going to cut you off.
Perfect.
Unless I
I'll
have
make them
to.
short. Okay, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah. So after our meetings with Senator Plum, I think it's fair just to say that the Utah Funeral Directors Association Board of Directors opposes this bill. We have found, and our past president, Brad Walker, is on the National Funeral Board at this time, and he has gone around the country and asked many funeral homes if this is something that has been asked for, and not very much demand is for this method of disposition. There are several here or several constituents that I've seen that are excited about the bill. Most of them talk about it being a green burial, minimizing a carbon footprint. And in my studies, that it couldn't be further from the truth. We have to maintain 130 degrees during this process over about a month and a half time, and that is a lot of energy expended. And so I think it's fair just to mention that it is a valid way of disposition, and far be it from me to say what is valid and what's not. But we want to bring that up. And we do have green burials as well that are green. We take the person, wrap them in a shroud, put them in a wicker basket, and bury them, and that is a green burial for those that want that kind of a burial. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Okay, we have one online. AJ Foley, you're up. And to testify, you need to turn on your video.
Hello. Hi. I was planning to speak on something else, but I was so excited to see this funeral bill. My name is AJ, and I'm just a craftsperson, a small business that I was just very excited to see this funeral bill, and I would like to thank Senator Plum for her work on researching this. I'm very excited to see options open up for consumers in the funeral industry, and for the individuals to have different options for their body disposition. If they decide personally that green burial or embalming is not the choice they would like to go with, but if they would like to go with organic body disposition, I think that's a very exciting development that will open up a lot of innovation and a lot of more comfort with the individual in funeral proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back to the committee for further consideration. Senator Weiler.
Thank you. I'm sorry I had to step out for a court hearing, but I've read the bill and I've talked to some stakeholders. I guess my primary concern is if I bought a house and paid hundreds of thousands of dollars and found out after I moved in that somebody's grandpa was buried in the backyard, and that wasn't disclosed to me, I think I'd be pretty upset about that. So Senator, I think this is a kind of a weird, creepy way to dispose of bodies, But if we're not going to require it to be disclosed, I'm a hard no.
I certainly would not see any problem with any sort of disclosure requirement.
But that's not in the bill. It's not in
No,
the bill
it's,
before
I'm
us.
glad that,
so.
I'm glad that you're bringing that up. I think that that's an amendment that would be very appropriate, that that sort of disclosure took place. If you'd like to propose an amendment, or I can certainly work on one, but I have zero problem with that, and I also don't, I disagree. I don't disagree with you on that.
I have a question about that. So disclosure to whom? Just the first transaction
Yeah?
post burial, the second, third? Is it something that is placed on the deed? Is it something that a title search would find? So when we say notice or disclosure, how would that function?
That's a great question.
Well, and I think it's also, it's this concept that it's a little oogie, right? And I think that farmers have used this concept for decades, centuries even, for disposition of agricultural and animal remains. And I know in my growing up years, there's probably some properties where some former pets of ours are resting. And, I get it. I get why there's that sense of ugh from it. But I think that, if that's something that we would want to add, I don't see a problem with that. I also hear what Senator Bramwell's saying about, well, how far back are we going? And do you want us to dig it up and test all the soils for whether there's horse or cow or whatever remains there? I mean, we could snowball anything, right? We could snowball all of them. I also think it's really important to point out when we talk about the energy usage, natural organic reduction uses 1/8 the energy of cremation. So you're right, there is still energy being used. It saves over a metric ton of CO2 per person. That's the equivalent of the energy required to power 49,000 homes for a year. That's 10 million seedlings growing into trees. So we're never going to totally agree on the things, but I think it's also a little bit disingenuous not to say that this uses less energy. It does use less energy.
Well,
Again, I'm not here to say that's why. I just wanted to.
Senator, the question was not about that. The
Oh,
question
sorry,
was about
yes.
disclosure.
Yes, thank you
That-
for getting me back
need-
on track.
You need
I
to save that
appreciate
for your summation.
Thank you. I appreciate that redirection.
Senator Weiler, did you have any other?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Ibsen,
I'd like to make a motion.
we've got a couple more. We'll come back to you.
Okay.
Hold that thought. Senator Sandel.
Thank you. Along those same lines, you may want to consider what, if any, right family members would have to come back if there's an assumption that that's a burial spot, and what family members would or wouldn't be able to do. I'd hate to get into a position where that became a claim. So just if you're considering ideas.
I like that. Thank you.
Okay. I had one other question along those same lines. Burial grounds are by many cultures sacred and untouchable, can't be disturbed, can't be modified, whatever. What would that do to the property? I think that would have to be a consideration as well. Senator Ibsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we move the agenda.
Motion is that we move to the next item on the agenda. Discussion to that motion. Senator Kwan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that probably is I'm going to support the motion. It's probably the best thing that we can do because there are some questions in here that I'd love to discuss more and hammer out before we bring it back in. So.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion to move to the next item? Senator Plum, would you like to speak to that motion?
No, I agree. I think there's some I'm glad to hear these thoughts and these inputs. I think there's some great questions that I'd like to hammer out a little bit better and get addressed in the bill. So I welcome that.
All in favor of the motion to move to the next item on the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, Senate Bill 116, eviction notice requirements. Oh, you were a no. Sorry. Let me recall that. The vote was, let's see, 7-1, with Senator Cullimore voting in opposition. Okay? We'll now go to Senate Bill 116. Welcome.
Thank Thank you. Nice to see you again, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I do have an amendment for this bill. Would you like me to go ahead and address that preemptively as we go forward?
Yeah, this was Amendment K. I presume it's Amendment 1 under your name?
Yes, absolutely.
Chair will entertain a motion to adopt Amendment 1. Senator Cullimore moves adoption of Amendment 1 at the request of Senator Plum. Any discussion on that motion? See none, I'll place it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion does carry unanimously. Your bill's amended.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and members again of the committee. This bill is a bill that deals with what happens in the event of an eviction in a very specific space, and that is what happens with companion animals when that were to happen. As you can imagine, it's a fairly stressful time as folks are losing the roof over their head, and also a pretty stressful time for the folks with mostly 4 legs, I guess occasionally more or less than that, but the companion animals who rely on them. In working with some advocates in the space and also working with some of the folks who work in sort of the landlord and property space, I wanted to come up with a way that we could smooth out what happens in the event of such a setting. And I'm sad to say that there's not a uniform kind of requirement that when you're evicted and your property, say the locks are changed and the property goes, that you are going to be told where your animal is taken. Some counties do. In fact, I think, Peyton, if you have the forms that you can get out to the members of the committee, some counties in their animal control space do make a notification, animal has gone to XYZ, you have 5 days to reclaim. And knowing that, I think, stops a lot of things. It stops a bunch of phone calls around to a whole bunch of different animal control facilities who are already stressed and overburdened with animals and understaffed, as many places are right now. It also stops a lot of phone calls to landlords and property managers and the people who already are having a contentious experience with folks, and they may not even know where the animal went. And most importantly, it gets that connection of the human and the companion animal back together just more smoothly. As you can see in the form that was brought around, it wouldn't be a tough thing to do. There's a notice that you come to get the animal, and that you've come to get the animal, and here's where they have gone. In talking with some of my colleagues, much appreciation who work in the space, and thank you especially to Senator Cullimore, who helped me look at this as well. The amendment addresses a couple of things that make more sense and also add a little bit of clarity here. It does add that the notification to the local animal authority could come from the sheriff, constable, or the landlord that they are needed to come and get the animal. It does say that the animal control authority shall respond and take custody of that companion animal within 1 business day after the time that they are notified. It does set out that the landlord provides information to the animal control office on how to get a hold of the people. And it also just makes it clear that there's a process we're going to set up, and this is going to be pretty predictable no matter where you live. This is just going to be something that smooths out what is, like I said, a rough situation, and I think helps both sides of the spectrum here in a challenging time. The bill also, this is not in the amendment, the bill also does set up some limits on what fees can be charged once an animal is taken into the animal control space. It sets up a maximum, so it is on line 106. It does set up a charge of one-time fee, $25 per companion animal, plus an additional charge up to $10 per day. As you might imagine, if someone's being evicted, their resources are not really backed up. And actually, as someone here can attest to, when those charges start to get up into the hundreds of dollars, it doesn't help the person and the animal get reunited. It then leaves the animal control space, the shelter space, with an animal that they've potentially got to rehome when it had another loving home. It just, I think, is something that we can set up a space where there would not be gouging. And with that, I'm open to questions or thoughts from the committee.
Senator, the notice that you passed around has a couple of differences. Obviously, the impound is $10 more than your maximum. The daily is 50% more than your maximum.
Sure.
And it's limited to 5 days.
Yeah.
Yours appears to be open-ended.
I believe there is going to be room, I should say, for some uniquenesses within what those shelters are. each shelter or each space has. That is an example, though, of why I do think it's important to have it laid out. But that's just an example being used right now.
But so should this pass, and we'd be telling Davis County that they can't charge what they're charging, and they can't limit what they're limiting.
Valid point, yeah, valid points.
Okay. Senator Ibsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where does this put us with cities, municipalities, cities and towns with taking away their right to handle animal control? I'm a little concerned about that.
Do you mean who's appointed as animal control, or do you mean?
Well, the process that you're that you're proposing, we're going to tell the cities how they're going to do it.
Gotcha. So you mean as opposed to?
Local control, you're taking away local control. I'm concerned about that.
Okay, help me with a little more granularity on that, because in my mind, animal control is whoever the city says animal control is, or county, or whoever's in charge of that. I think it's mostly Salt Lake County here, but City of Salt Lake, South Salt Lake does have them. Is there a way I could clarify that better that would allow them a little more?
Well, have you talked with the league? Have they had any input on this ordinance?
No, we will absolutely, though. We've talked with the animal control entities, but not specifically the leagues. That's absolutely something that can be
So
a conversation.
I'm
can be
just
had.
concerned that we're taking control away from the cities, mandating something that almost could be an unfunded mandate.
I think the challenge, and I hear you on that, I think the challenge is that a worst-case scenario to me is that there is not a set-up response for this, and, a landlord or anyone else would just be encouraged to turn them loose or leave them locked in a house, and I would think that our cities, counties, spaces would want there to be protections. So maybe there's a way to clarify, maybe if it's not animal control officer or other city designee or something like that, if that were something like that, is that kind of what you're getting at, that would give more?
I hate to see us take control away from the cities. And I see what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with that. But I am concerned that it's Big Brother pushing down on the cities, and that concerns me.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair conversation to be had, for certain.
Senator Sandel.
Thank you, Chair. You alluded to my concern about this is if you blanket this policy across the state, but you haven't determined animal shelters, how long they have the responsibility to keep the animal before they can put it into a home or euthanize or whatever they have to do, you've set up a situation where animal shelters are going to be in problem eventually.
Well,
Because
and
you're taking all of that control away from them, and now you've got to at least give them notice that, like here you say 5 days, if you haven't picked your animal up in 5 days, you haven't got that. An animal would have to be there forever, according to what I read in this bill.
Yeah, and from what I'm understanding, from especially with one of the advocates here who knows this space well, that there is already 5-day stray hold. That's state law, that there's a 5-day stray hold for any of our shelter spaces. So that's not, I didn't change that here, that already exists.
I guess my problem is these would not be strayed animals. These aren't stray animals.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, these are owned animals.
Gotcha.
Senator Cullimore.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the senator's work on this and some of the work that we've accomplished up to this point. There was a couple things that I overlooked that I just want to highlight, and I think for practical purposes right now, to Senator Sandel's point, is when this situation happens, and I don't think this is a huge problem, but it's a problem enough that it's probably worth addressing. But when it does happen, if the animal control is not willing to come pick up the animal, it becomes a stray. The landlord doesn't really have any other options other than to let it go and then call it out as a stray. And so, but to your point, I think there is room in here to put some parameters around the timeframes and stuff like that. And I'm not here to speak about the fee caps that are in here, because that's animal control, so there might be room to work on that. But I guess my question is that I overlooked and should have brought up with you before is in defining companion animal. First off, most federal law refers to them as assistance animals, but do we even need to narrow this to assistance animals? Shouldn't it just be any animal left after an eviction? And maybe you could,
Senator?
yeah.
The federal law refers to service animals defined as a canine trained to perform one or more duties specific to an individual's disability.
Correct.
And the
Under
motion-
ADA, under fair housing, there's a broader term
Yeah,
of
no, that's,
assistance. Yeah.
and then there's support animals. You're saying under fair housing, there's another classification.
Assistance animals encompasses support and service animals under fair housing.
And the companion animal definition, for clarity too, it came from bill that was run last year on adding animals to domestic violence reports and protection orders. So this is the description from companion animal there. That's just so you have some reference from where that's
I guess
coming
my
from.
question is, shouldn't this bill just apply to any potential animal that's left after an eviction, though?
Yes, I suppose, but on some level, I didn't want to get into, what if it's a horse or a mule, or, I didn't want that to cross into that potential agricultural versus companion that lives in the house distinction that, like if some sheep were left in the pasture, I wanted to keep it clear that this was about the companion animals that would go to the shelter sort of space.
Sure, and it looks like you have an exclusion here for production animals, so maybe we could still define it as domestic animals that
Okay.
are all animals that are exclusive of these production animals that are already excluded and defined in here.
No, I'm
Just a thought.
absolutely open to that. I'm absolutely open to that idea.
Okay, any other questions? See no lights? Let's go to the audience. Who in the audience would like to speak to this bill? We have one witness at the table. Anyone else? Ma'am, the time is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, committee, for hearing Senate Bill 116. My name is Christina Pulsifer, and I am the co-founder and co-executive director of Rough Haven Crisis Sheltering. Our mission is to keep pets with their people, and about 50% of the clients that we have in our temporary care sheltering program are in our program due to housing crisis and evictions. So Utah actually has 60 municipal shelters in the state, and 10 of them are here in Salt Lake County. So Salt Lake County has the largest amount. Salt Lake County Animal Services is the largest shelter, municipal shelter in the state.
Excuse me, ma'am. We're on a short time
Okay.
time limit. Can you get to the crux of your comments?
Absolutely. So the fees do vary throughout the state currently. If you are facing an eviction, it's difficult to pay a $100 impound and perhaps $20 a night on fees. It costs about the animal shelter additional $500 to $800 to house an animal. And so by capping that limit, we feel like this would reunify animals with their people and save the municipal shelter costs as well. And we have spoken to several municipal shelters throughout the state. But we are hoping to ease the burden of people who are experiencing housing insecurity and financial struggles, as well as save the municipal shelters some money. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call. Anyone else speaking to the bill? Bring it back to the committee for further consideration. Senator Kwan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we favorably recommend this bill. What number is it? 116, SB 116, as amended to the full House for consideration.
To the motion, Senator Cullimore?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I support it.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Seeing no lights, Senator Weiler.
Yeah, I'm probably going to vote for the motion, but I have some serious reservations about overriding any county or city fees on that. So I'd like to see an amendment on that before on second reading if it passes today.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? See none, I'll place it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous, but it sounds like you have some work, Senator, before it comes up for debate
Before
on
the
the floor.
Yes,
Or it may not fare well.
I really do appreciate all the input. I think it will make it better. I really do. So thank you very much.
Okay, I see Representative Musselman came in. We have House Bill 37. Did he leave?
I think he's just shy.
You almost lost your slot.
They made me stand out in the hall. I opted for
They
that.
almost didn't let me
I was right
back
by the
in.
door, though, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Welcome, House Bill 37.
I'll need some, if it pleases the chair, the first sub's on the system. I'll be speaking to that, and if I need somebody to move that first sub.
Let's move the first sub. Senator Sandel.
Yeah, motion to delete and title and body HB 37 and replace it with first substitute HB 37.
All in favor of the motion to substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know that I'll go over all the presentation again necessarily, given that I gave it Friday, but nevertheless, to the clarity of thought that the good chair had noticed, there may be some potential concern with some of the language. The language was reordered to clarify that, so that the May 1st going forward, there was no clarification, or there was no ambiguity with the new language as to whether or not it would go back in time. It was a good change. That's all that the sub does, is make that clarification. So with that, that's my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We heard the bill Friday. Questions on the substitute? Seeing no lights, anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill? One person online, Gary Christensen. You need to turn your, unmute yourself.
Mr. Chair, Committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Gary Christensen. I'm currently the Washington County Recorder. I'm speaking for the UAC Recorders Association, and just letting you know that we are in support of this bill. Representative Musselman has done a great job in helping clarify language in this bill that we feel is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back to the committee for further consideration. Senator Cullimore.
Oh, I'm sorry. There might be somebody else. Are you ready for a motion?
Oh,
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I didn't know this was already heard, so is it inappropriate to have new testimony, or?
No, I'm sorry, Danny, when I called for anyone else, I didn't see you raise your hand, stand up, or
I
jump up
tried-
and down,
I
or
tried
anything
to jump
else.
Up and down.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm representing myself today. My name is Danny Palmer, and I just had a concern that a legal presumption means that this would be applied in most cases. In business and everything else, we have a lot of situations where more than one person is added to the title of a property, and so it doesn't seem like that would be the presumption to have joint tenancy with survivorship, but rather it should be the exception. And so that's my objection or my concern with this bill.
Okay, duly noted. Is there anyone else now? Wave your hand, stand up, jump up and down. We'll bring it back to the committee. Senator Cullimore.
I'll make the motion that we favorably recommend for substitute Senate Bill or House Bill
37. Motion is to pass out favorably first substitute House Bill 37. Discussion to that motion. Representative, would you like to sum?
Just quickly, I would just, in response to the last testimony, that very concern was considered. We submitted to a group of, obviously, the recorder's office, as well as attorneys, as well as professors, the real estate industry, the title industry. And I understand that concern, but given the current kind of trend in the market on how individuals take title, this was the appropriate way forward. Thank you.
Senator, summation?
Yeah, I'll just echo that. In talking to a lot in the industry, I think this bill resolves a lot more concerns than it raises, so
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, House Bill 257, sex-based designations for privacy, anti-bullying, and women's opportunities. Representative Birkeland, you have an amendment. Do you want us to adopt the amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay. Before I do, let's And before we begin the presentation, how many here are here to speak against this bill? Show of hands. Okay. How many are here to speak in favor of the bill? Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to have those against the bill line up on this side of the room. And I'm doing it now so that we're not interrupted in the middle of the presentation. Those in favor of the bill, line up on the east side of the room, if you would, please. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at the witness table, we'll have two from, one from each side come. Folks on the east will occupy the east, when we get to the public comment. Folks on the east will occupy the east seat. Folks on the opposed will occupy the west seat. When you come up, there's a sign-in sheet. We ask that you write your name and fill out that while the other person is speaking, okay? How many do we have over here in favor? 8? Okay, we're going to take 8 on this side that are in opposition. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we can do this one of two ways. That's 16 folks. If we give each one 2 minutes, that will take us some time. We can continue beyond that. Anyone not in the we'll give 2 minutes each to the first 16. Everyone after that will be 1 minute. Okay? We do have folks online that would like to speak. Once we're done with the folks speaking here, we'll go to the folks online. Those in opposition, and those in favor, I would encourage you to not repeat what previous witnesses have testified to. If we've heard it once, that generally is enough. If we hear it 16 times, that doesn't change the message. So we'd encourage you to not repeat what other witnesses have said. And as I indicated previously, legislators are referred to by their titles of representative or senator. The chair will not tolerate any impugning of character, impugning of motives, or any personal attacks or personal references. You're welcome to speak to the bill, but should there be a violation of that, we will suspend any further public comment and come right back to the committee for committee discussion and action on the bill. That applies to the folks in this room, and it applies to the folks online. With those ground rules, Representative Birkeland, the time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senators, for your time. Just a quick, brief background for all of you.
Pull the mic a little bit closer so they can hear you easy online.
The reason why I have this bill before you today is because many, many states have opened up what they are calling women's bills of rights. There were many in the legislature who were interested in exploring what this bill would entitle. And I'll be frank, most of them, well, all of them were men. And I thought, if we're going to have a women's bill of rights, I want a woman to run it. I might as well run it because as a female, I've been discriminated against, I've been assaulted, I could go on. I thought, if anything, I would know how to speak to this and address this. As I looked into how other bills are running this women's bill of rights, there wasn't a lot of context to it. So I went deeper. This bill defines what a man and woman is, yes, but it also codifies language within Title IX to ensure that when my daughters and your grandchildren show up to athletic events in high school, which are taxpayer funded, that those are fair events, that the girls no longer have to have the worst field every time. We're going to share the best fields equally. And I know no one cares about this part of the bill, but it is important to me that this is part of a bill that many other states are calling a Women's Bill of Rights. Now, mine isn't called a Women's Bill of Rights because this issue is more than that. It's a privacy bill, and it is an anti-bullying bill. More children in our state are being bullied than ever before. More children in our state don't feel safe going to the bathroom. They don't feel safe in locker rooms. They don't feel safe at school. A lot of them don't even feel safe online because they have mobile devices where they're being bullied now beyond the realms of a school. This bill 100% wanted to make sure, number one, we had privacy for everybody and that we were not allowing or perpetuating bullying within our schools. Within the bill, there's a privacy plan for school children. That to me is a very imperative privacy plan. It's so important in the bill that we, instead of talking about all the things that the media and many people want to get focused on, I want to focus for just a moment on how important safety is in bathrooms. The privacy plan is designed to ensure that whatever your condition is, body image, bullying, medical needs, or just discomfort within your own body, you have a place to go and do things that are private in a private place. Now, a lot of people are saying that this is unnecessary because assault doesn't happen in bathrooms. No one's doing anything wrong in bathrooms. And if you would allow it, Mr. Chair, I have many examples of instances of sexual harassment and rape and assault that have occurred around the nation in bathrooms. But I would go a step further. It is very difficult as a woman to constantly be told that my feelings, my daughter's feelings, my friends, my family, all the women that I know, that their feelings don't matter as much because it hurts somebody else's feelings. We should be working together, whether we're transgender, whether we're cisgender, whether we're man, woman, whatever. We should all want to respect the safety and privacy, most particularly for women. I can tell you, and I guarantee for every one of you on the stand, that you have a spouse or a loved one or a sister or a mother who has walked through a grocery store parking lot late at night and has not felt safe, who's maybe walked into a bathroom and not felt safe, who was told not to wear certain clothes because doing so would make them not safe, who has to keep their drink with them at certain settings because to leave it unattended wouldn't be safe. We're told throughout our life to be careful and to be safe as women. But when we say that we don't feel safe sometimes in the bathroom, and not just because it's a transgender woman, nobody I know cares if a transgender woman comes into their bathroom, uses it for its intended purpose, and walks out. That is not what this bill is about. What this bill is about is when a man walks into a bathroom or a locker room facility, which has happened here in our state, and just hangs out there, does not use it for its intended purposes. And today, any man in this state can do that. You can walk into a women's bathroom or women's locker room and changing room, shower, whatever. And if you say you identify as a woman, you can't and won't be arrested. So no, there is no police record of these people being arrested because it's not illegal for them to just sit there. How do we tell women to protect themselves and be safe? How do we tell school-age girls to don't allow yourself to be groomed? To ensure that you are safe and that you consent to everything, and then call them bigots if they say they're not comfortable in certain settings. This bill is trying to seek a balance of ensuring that women's rights are protected and that there is privacy for everybody in this state. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does, thank you.
Senator Weiler.
Thank you. I've talked to some law enforcement in my area, in my district, and every one of them, I've said, is it legal today for a man to go into a woman's locker room, let's say a rec center, and just hang out nude, showing off their private parts for an hour? Every police officer I've talked to said that's already illegal. Do you agree that that's already illegal?
If they're nude, I believe in most cases, yes.
Okay, all right. So I want to pose you a hypothetical, and I'll make myself the pedophile just to be fair. So hypothetically, let's say I'm a gay man, and let's say I'm also a pedophile, because I'm going to first acknowledge that I think most LGBT people, the vast majority, are not pedophiles. But let's say I'm a gay man and I'm a pedophile, and I go and I'm looking for little boys or younger boys, teenage boys. And so I go and I make sure every time the high school swimming team is practicing at my rec center, because in Bountiful we share them, the schools use our facilities, that I'm naked in the locker room. Maybe I take an hour-long shower, but I'm showing my stuff to all of these high school boys on a regular basis. I'm there every time they practice. Does your bill prohibit that?
No.
Because that to me is a problem. And let's say I'm a gay woman, same thing, pedophile. I'm looking for teenage friends, and I'm hanging out naked in a girls' locker room when I know girls' sports teams are there. Does your bill prohibit that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Bluen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we addressing the amendment right now? When are we going to move to that?
We have not adopted the amendment yet. Representative Berklin had asked that we adopt it. We can adopt it at this point if you'd like to make a motion.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Motion is to adopt Amendment 4 in Representative Berklin's name. Would you like to explain what the amendment does?
Yes, just briefly. It provides indemnification for anyone who is following in compliance with this bill, from school districts to any governmental entity.
Okay. Discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing no lights, I'll place it.
If I might.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I support this amendment, and I'll vote for it. I do think it acknowledges that it opens us up to some significant lawsuits, but I'm supportive of providing cover to our schools in that circumstance. So.
Okay. All in favor of motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The bill is amended. Now to the amended bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, one of the things that struck me here was it seems like, you know, we're talking about this as a trans issue, but it seems like more of a creepy men in bathrooms issue. So I wonder how that's kind of been thought about as we have worked through this bill. Additionally, it seems like there's kind of two pieces here. We're thinking about locker rooms, we're thinking about bathrooms. Was there any thought given to maybe separating those two or treating locker rooms and bathrooms differently? Because I think probably everyone acknowledges that hanging out in a locker room, whether you're naked or not, and just sitting there taking pictures, whatever, that's not good behavior. And I think we could probably agree on addressing that in a very targeted way. But the way I look at this, it's really criminalizing someone's identity and targeting a person more specifically than actually the problematic behavior.
Yes, actually, we looked into it. I met with stakeholders and discussed how we would handle this, particularly in rec centers and facilities where, unfortunately, we have a very old system where the bathroom, the showers, and the locker room are all one area. Now, newer buildings are doing much better, and this bill hopes to expand upon that, where it is all just single occupancy. But until government entities have the funding to go in that direction completely, I wanted to have something in there to address any areas. I promise you, Senator, it was our goal to make sure we could just differentiate those whenever possible, but there's really not a way to do that when many of in our education system and in our rec centers, they're all in one.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I ask another question or two?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. One potential, well, I guess I'll ask it as a question. Did you consider kind of looking at this as like a loitering issue in bathrooms? I think there is loitering in other parts of the statutes. It was kind of mentioned earlier that there's already potentially criminal statutes that would apply to some of this. It seems like we could focus again more specifically on like that actual behavior and do something around that rather than the identity of the people that are perpetrating this behavior.
We did. We looked into loitering. When I talked to a lot of the people who have concerns. And if I may, over 20,000 parents reached out to USBE on issues of privacy within the school. So there's a lot of people that I believe that's more parents in history on a single issue that have reached out to USBE. So you can imagine a lot of these parents, when they heard I was running a bill in this area, reached out to me. And sometimes it's not loitering though. Sometimes it is, a 17-year-old boy who's later come forward and said, I wasn't really transgender, but he thought he could get away with it, right? No harm, no foul, parent, the school district said. But the parents were like, no, that is harm and foul, because my daughter, even though it was a one-time occurrence, felt violated. Her privacy, her comfort zone felt violated. And so he didn't loiter. He just went in there and said, I'm feeling transgender today, which is a horrible thing to do that only harms more people. And I don't want to see the transgender community harmed in any way, believe it or not. But I also don't want to see young girls harmed. And so to just stick to loitering really didn't capture the essence of what a lot of parents and their children are facing right now.
Okay, thank you. One more question.
Go ahead.
How have you thought about this as far as impacts to the business community? Our airport is, I think, a major facility that would be impacted here. Were there discussions with leaders at the airport or with Delta that's planning on expanding their facilities here in Salt Lake City? I know in other areas this has had similar laws have had very large economic impacts. I mean, we're talking about potentially billions of dollars in lost revenues and developments that didn't come, companies that didn't want to expand to that area. So what conversations were had there, and what do you expect the outcome to be?
I've not spoken and sat down with the Salt Lake Airport specifically on this bill. It's my belief that the Utah legislature has historically shown that we don't make policy based on what's right for businesses as far as who's going to leave our, state. We saw that with the outdoor industry, and they came back. We were threatened that if we did certain things, we wouldn't get the All-Star game, but we got them, right? We make policy that we believe is best for the people we represent, and we let businesses make the decisions that's best for their company. As far as the airport, I think it's really important, Senator, if I may, to point out that if an individual from another state flies into the Salt Lake Airport and needs to use the bathroom, they are welcome to use the restroom that matches with their sex at birth. And if they need to use and want to use another bathroom and it's not a unisex restroom that's available at the airport, they can go into, if they're a transgender man, into the men's bathroom. But what they can't do is go in there for an improper purpose. They can't go in there and cause something that a reasonable person would say is alarming. So I don't see that there's going to be a lot of problems with this bill at the airport if we really believe that the majority of the people in this nation and in this state are good, wholesome people. And there's a few bad actors who are getting away with something. And those are the people that this bill honestly and truly targets.
Thank you. No more questions. I think that kind of speaks to how I see as the direction here, though, is that we're looking at this small subset, as you just kind of mentioned, and we're impugning them for someone else's behavior, and that doesn't strike me as a fair balance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Kwan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am overwhelmed by the amount of concerns that I have for this bill, and I don't want to take up time here because there's so many people that want to speak, and this is their last chance really to speak on this bill. I will say that I wonder if this bill makes it so that a male presenting person would then need to go into a women's restroom, and wouldn't that alarm a reasonable person much more than a transgender woman with biological male parts?
Well, yes, Senator, I think that would alarm quite a few people, which is why this bill heavily emphasizes on the use of single occupancy facilities, making those more available. In talking with Troy Williams from the ACLU. He told me that over 90% of transgender individuals are already seeking out those facilities. So this bill has an effort to provide more of those and make them more and more accessible. Now, if that transgender male, again, walks into that men's bathroom and doesn't do anything improper, doesn't cause a reasonable person alarm, they will continue to go about their life as they always have.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, a follow-up. So I would really like to hear the thoughts of Troy Williams to kind of help me understand
Senator,
what was happening there. But
that-
I have a
that's-
question.
That's out of order at this point. If Mr. Williams wants to speak from the
Right.
public, he's welcome to stand in line and speak.
That's what I
But
was gonna
right-
say.
But right now, the questions are for the sponsor.
That's what I was going to say, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thanks for that clarification, because if what I was saying is that I would hope if Mr. Williams would like to speak on that, because my concern about this is that I don't know of any data that would support the separation in this way. I absolutely agree with you that respect and privacy is a really important thing, and I understand where you're going from, trying to get to. I think it missed the mark, though. I think individual, as you say, private stalls, privacy for all is the more important thing, because I worry that our transgender women who feel maybe that they have to go into a men's room would feel very bullied, maybe, or attacked or worried to get in there. And Mr. Chair, I thank you so much for your indulgence here. I know we have a whole lot of people that want to speak, so I'll stop here and then explain my vote again when we get there.
Senator Ibsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's been some concern of pull down or loss of federal funds because of this bill. Would you speak to that, please?
Yes, and I can tell you, Senator, we are working with, I met with my Senate sponsor, we are working right now with the drafting attorney on language that would take away that concern so that we would not have to worry about losing any federal funding.
So you'll do that on the way to the floor?
That's, if it passes through here, that will be an
Okay,
amendment.
thank you for that.